Welcome to the Sawyer Business School Amplification Avenue Podcast presented by Suffolk University. With this episode, I will host another career conversation with a young professional who's grinding out their career in sports. You can check out our previous conversations on YouTube or on your favorite podcast platform. As always, the mission of these conversations are to provide inspiration and insight for those young professionals who are grinding out their careers at relatively low pay, working long hours, or for those who are simply just beginning the process of preparing for that career in sports, whether it's here at the Sawyer Business School or at another sports management program around the world. I hope you enjoy the conversation. Enough talk. Let's get to our latest career conversation. Let's welcome to the Sawyer Business School Amplification Avenue Podcast, rising young pro. And I don't even say rising because I think he's reached, just about as high as you can and reach with maybe one other level. But a rising young superstar plus a Suffolk grad, Jacob Tobey. I'm going to let him fill you in on exactly what he's doing these days. But Jacob, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate it. You've been very nice to me recently, which has been awesome. You're a very nice guy, and to come on here, it's really, really great. So I'm excited to talk to you.
Well, it's been my pleasure. It was my pleasure to have you at class, and
Yes.
you are the cover boy of the latest Suffolk Alumni Mag. I'm assuming they sent you copies of this, or they're on the way already.
Well, I got a lot of copies. I sent about 10 to my mom and some other family members. So that's my first ever time being on a magazine cover. I can tell you that much.
That's great. Great. Looks like you had a good photo shoot
Yeah.
that day. All right, let's jump into these 10 career questions. And again, these are to provide insight and inspiration for those who are grinding it out in the career of sports. And a lot of us are not going to obtain the levels that you have, but there certainly are those who are chasing down those broadcasting jobs. So first and foremost, a little bit of tip off by the swag that you're wearing, but where do you work and what is your job title? And I know you do multiple things, so share them all.
Yeah. So I work in the NBA for the San Antonio Spurs, and I'm their television play-by-play announcer. So if you watch the game, whether you're in town or you watch on NBA League Pass around the country, or frankly like around the world now, you'll hear my voice talking throughout the game. I work with Sean Elliott, who played for the Spurs for a long time. His number's retired. He's a two-time All-Star. He's an NBA champion. He won it with the Spurs in '99, and he's been calling the games here for 20 years. So actually, it's 24 years, I think. He just finished his 24th year. So for me to sit next to him every single night and to just talk about the game, to be there for great moments, the amazing players that are in the NBA, there's somebody new every single night that's an absolute star. And so I just get to fill in, the excitement level and kind of bring the who, the what, the when storylines to the game, and then I kind of set up Sean to tell us why is that happening on the court? Why is he acting this way? Why is coach doing it this way? And so it's kind of like a tandem thing where we work together. And so yeah, I mean, and that's not the only thing I do for the Spurs. I mean, I do a lot of stuff on social media. We film stuff, interviews for social media. Steph Castle just won the Rookie of the Year for us, and he had a press conference, and we went there and did a little interview for Instagram and did Instagram Live. And so there's social media stuff that I do as well, interviews off to the side. So it's not just calling the game, it's kind of doing a bunch of different stuff. I do speaking events for the Spurs. I'm an MC for them. I'm kind of all Spurs 24/7, and it's been really great. I just finished my first year, and it went, as well as I thought it could go. Being a new guy from the East Coast, being plopped into San Antonio, which is not the easiest thing to do, trying to learn the history and fit in. It's gone decently well, I'd say.
Yeah, I know it has. And you're doing a little bit of a side hustle with the in the WNBA as well?
Yeah. So I am also the play-by-play voice for the Golden State Valkyries, who are the newest WNBA team, the 13th team in the WNBA. And it's a totally different experience because it's a totally different league with new players, new storylines, new play styles. And so I'm kind of doing a thing where I'm flying back and forth between San Antonio and San Francisco, and it keeps me fresh this summer. It keeps me locked in. It's going to make me better as a broadcaster. So I figured, why not try something new and because I'm sort of a newer fan of the WNBA. I mean, I've always followed it, from afar, but now being in it every single day is totally different, and it was fun. We had the first game a couple days ago, and it was like a record crowd, like third most attendance in a preseason game ever for the
Mm-hmm.
WNBA, and it was their first ever game at Chase Center in San Francisco. So there's great like excitement behind the team, and to be like the first voice of a team was appealing because it's like historic. So
Yeah.
summer work is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're playing in a big building in the Chase building. So
Yeah, which
it's a
holds
lot.
which holds like 20,000, and they got 17.
That's
So
great.
it honestly sounded just like a Warriors game. It was that loud.
It's fantastic. And I'm sure you've got at least two matches or two games against Caitlin Clark and the Fever, if not more. So I know there's great excitement and enthusiasm behind the game there. And clearly there's good enthusiasm, great enthusiasm behind San Antonio and what the young group that they have there. You talked a little bit about it already. I was going to ask you what you do in detail. Can you share what you do on a daily basis? You sort of talked about that, but maybe you want to focus on perhaps the non-broadcasting side, the social media things. But what does a day look like for you in season?
I would say busy. Like you're it's weird because I work in the NBA, but I love it. So I'm sort of consuming it as my job, but also my passion and my hobby. Like I've watched every single playoff game pretty much this year. Like that's just what I want to do. Like I'm not working in the playoffs right now, but I just want to watch. I want to keep up to
Mm-hmm.
date with
Mm-hmm.
big storylines, big games. So yeah, during the season, like if it's a day before the game, I'm probably putting in 4 to 5 hours of preparation on our team and the team that we're gonna play that next day. And so that's reading bios of each guy, reading storylines, following the stats from the season. I have a chart that I make that kind of lists all the players, their number, where they're from, where they went to high school, college, what they've done in the NBA, what they did in college if they're a rookie, what they did overseas if they're coming from Europe
Mm-hmm.
or what have you. And that's all your preparation, storylines on the coaches, just things that I've read throughout the week, throughout the season, stuff that I've watched, an interview on ESPN or a documentary, or I have all these notes, and you try to prepare for whatever can come up. You want to be ready if the 13th man off the bench somehow comes in and has a historic night. You want to be ready to say, hey, this kid's from Alabama, the smallest town in Alabama. He was poor, had to work his way to the NBA. Now he's making it, and so you just want to be ready for those moments. And so it takes a lot. Like most of the work's the prep, and then day of the game, I probably go to shoot around, hear from some of the players, and that's kind of in the morning. Go back, do some more prep, get a workout in, kind of get away from everything for a couple hours, and go over my notes one last time, put the suit on, and
Mm-hmm.
get in that mindset, get in that zone. A lot of the times I'll listen or watch previous games just to get a feel for how that team is playing, to hear the pronunciations of the names, just to make sure I'm getting them right, because the home announcers know how to do their own team. So I make sure to
Yeah. Yeah.
make those correct pronunciations, and I'll maybe do that on the bus on the way over if we're on the road game. But if we're at a home game, I live 10 minutes from the arena, so drive over, kind of just get in that zone, listen to my music, and walk into the arena, and it's go time. So I get there 45 minutes before the coaches do their press conferences, so I'm out on the court talking to some of the players that warm up, get a little insight, see how they're feeling, then go listen to our head coach, who now is Mitch Johnson.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mitch retired from coaching a couple days ago, which was big news. So Mitch Johnson, I listened to his press conference, go to the away press conference, listen to their head coach, go back out on the court for a couple minutes, go upstairs, have dinner, go back down, talk to my producer before the game, go over our graphics, and kind of just lock in from there. Sean talk to Sean for a little bit, see how he's feeling before the game, and then 7 o'clock tip, boom, on the air. Then we're going. Then it's just
Game time.
whatever the game brings. I don't try to force stuff down people's throats. If it happens, it happens, and then I bring the context to whatever happens.
Great. Talk about your path. We know, or alluded to the fact that you were here at Suffolk University, but what was your path, and has the journey been what you've expected?
Has the journey been what I expected? Yeah, you never know. You never know how long it's going to take for you to achieve something, and I wanted to achieve it quickly, and in industry standards, I sort of did. I'm 28. I'm the youngest TV announcer in the NBA, and that's a cool thing to say. And I'm not the youngest ever. Like, there are guys that were younger than me that made it to the league, but I'm one of the youngest, so I'll take it.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take it. I was trying to be. I think Marv Albert was the voice of the Knicks when he was like 23 or something.
Really?
I
I didn't
believe
know that.
I could be wrong, but something like that.
Is he still doing it too?
No. He doesn't do the Knicks anymore.
Huh.
He retired, but he could somewhere around 23, maybe even younger than that.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, But yeah, I knew I wanted to do this since I was 10 or 12. I took a trip to the Hall of Fame in Springfield, and they had this like interactive
I've
radio
seen
thing
it.
where you could
Yeah.
go and pretend, and I
Yeah.
pretended I was Johnny Most. Havlicek stole the ball, and that just like fired me up, and I was like, whoa, like, I could totally lean in and do this. So since that, I just kind of started practicing in my basement on Xbox, going crazy in my basement, pretending I was an announcer, pretending I was Kevin Harlan, Brian Anderson, my mentors, now my
Mm-hmm.
mentors, but before then I just was dreaming to be them, to know them, pretending to be Mike Breen or whatever. And then I started doing radio in high school. We convinced our radio, or our high school, to buy us some equipment, and started doing radio broadcasts. And then I got to college and joined radio station at Suffolk, joined the TV studio, Studio 73, had 2 or 3 shows a week, was announcing basketball and soccer games for Suffolk. I'd also go work for other schools around the city. I worked for MIT and did their basketball and softball games.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
took the train to Worcester and did Holy Cross's baseball games.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I would wake up super early on a Saturday and take the train and go do a baseball game, in Worcester. And that was really cool because it was Division One, and I had never really done anything Division One before. So that was my first ever Division One job. I did some Northeastern baseball as well. That was pretty cool. And so you just gather up a bunch of these little jobs and try and do the best you can. And I made sure to have my fun in college, but I was not focused really on that. I was focused on my career. I wanted to make sure that it felt like I was already a professional, calling
That's
all
good.
these games, doing radio, doing TV, and doing internships. I interned to cover the Celtics with CLNS Media, so I was in the
Mm-hmm.
garden
Mm-hmm.
every single night when I was a senior. I was interning with the Patriots radio station 98.5, the Sports Hub, on game days, helping produce the pre and post game show. I wasn't really doing a ton, but I was there. I was helping as much as I could. I was learning,
You were learning, yeah.
and I was just always on the go, always, and that's just what was told me was
Yeah.
you gotta just always be working towards it. And everyone I would tell, I'd step into the office of my intern's boss and be like, I want to be in the NBA. I want to be an announcer. They'd be like, all right, we'll get there. And every step of the way, I would just tell my bosses I wanted to do that. My first job in Tulsa, Oklahoma, as a weekend sports anchor, I told my boss, this is great. I love being here. I want to be in the NBA. Just letting you know that's my goal one day, is to be in the NBA.
Right.
So that planted the seed. So he then let me go off and do some high school football games when I wasn't really needed at the station. He'd let me go off and do some junior college basketball games when I had some time off and away from my regular job. And so he let me do that. And then I moved to Denver during COVID and was doing weekend sports there on the news and did Division II basketball there. And then I started doing Wyoming basketball games 2 hours away. And so I'd make that drive a couple times a week, do their basketball games. Then I got my opportunity with with FS1 with Fox Sports. They needed somebody during COVID who was local because they wanted to start bringing announcers back after COVID, and they chose me. And so I got to do my first national TV game. It was a Colorado
Awesome.
Arizona game, I believe, and it came down to like I think someone made a dunk with like 10 seconds left. Christian Coloco made a dunk with like 10 seconds
Mm-hmm,
left.
mm-hmm.
He hit that was like the game winner, and that was my first ever game announcing on TV nationally. Then that turned into more games with Fox, more games with the Pac-12 network. So I was doing that off to the side of my regular job, doing local sports on the news 5 days a week, going off, flying to Oregon or California to do a Pac-12 game, coming back that next day, working again, using my PTO to call these games. And so then all of that happened, and I started doing some G League work with the NBA. They started knowing my name. The Spurs caught wind of it. They had a job opening last summer, and now I'm sitting in an apartment in San Antonio. So I did a ton. I'm only 28, but I did a ton
Yeah.
in those 28 years, even less than that, obviously. And now I'm sitting in front of you. So it was a lot of work. It happened quickly, but it also like when it was happening, it didn't feel that quick because I was like in the grind. I was driving
Right,
all
right.
these places. I was flying all these places, and but it all adds up and it all works out.
Yeah, you do have to be, and I say this to myself at times, to me, in my own head or out loud, because I tend to talk out loud to myself, to be relentless. And there are times when I'm like, you're not being relentless enough. And that's not necessarily being in people's faces or being aggressive. It's just chasing it down, always looking to do more. And it certainly seems that you've done that. What are the skills that have brought the most value to your job and to your employer? What skills do you have that bring the most value?
Passion, passion. I think I told my first when I interviewed with the Spurs, my first interview, official interview, because unofficially Coach Pop stopped by and said hi to me at dinner the night before I interviewed. So that was,
Really? That's pretty
um,
cool.
yes, we can talk about that. My first official interview was RC Beeford, who's been here since the late '80s as an assistant coach. Now he's the CEO of the team. Started
Yeah.
as an assistant, now he's the CEO, longtime GM, and he runs the whole thing. And I looked him in the eyes and said, RC, I want the Spurs to be my life. I want the NBA to be my life. I've worked so hard for this. Like, I love this. There's nothing more in my life that means more than this. And I've been waiting however many years to say that to somebody who's going to make a decision on me.
Yeah,
I wanted
yeah.
them to, I wanted them to know I'm going to give however much percent, more than 100% like effort towards this thing. So, and they can hear that passion in my work. I think like that's something I pride myself on is I always tell people who ask, like I always bring myself back to that 10 to 12-year-old kid that was announcing on Xbox in his parents' basement, hoping he would get there one day. And now I get to sit there in the best seat in the house on the court, you know, announcing LeBron James against Victor Wembanyama. Like I'm just a kid from, Sandwich, Massachusetts. Like why why me? You right? Why not me? Is always how I would answer that. Why
Hmm,
not?
hmm.
That's what a lot of people would, mentors in my life would say. Like, why couldn't it be you?
Right,
And,
right.
and so that passion that you hear that in my voice, that excitement, that's just the love of the game. And I think relationship building was a massive, massive thing for me. I started knowing some of the Spurs people a year ago from my G League stuff, from my G League work. My mentors sort of, were sending my name to the Spurs, sending my names to a lot of NBA teams just to see, how what they thought of me. And this is a hard job, man. It's I don't want to say it's harder than actually playing in the NBA because that's pretty darn hard, but there's
Hmm, hmm.
less announcing jobs than there are jobs
The
playing in
roster
the NBA.
spots.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's 400 and whatever spots in the NBA, and there's 30 announcers for television and 30 announcers for TV or for radio. So it's hard to get here. It's really really hard because there's so many steps you have to go through. And I interviewed with so many people with the Spurs, but I just told them like I love this thing. I want to be here. I want to be your guy. And the relationships that I built with them previously made a big difference. And like RC Buford knew that I worked calling college basketball a lot for Colorado Buffaloes, and he knows the head coach there. And he called him up and asked him about me because he wanted to make sure that I was a very good guy, a trustworthy guy. And Tad Boyle, the head coach of Colorado, vouched for me because I was nice to him. We had a good working relationship. He told him how much passion I had for the game, how much he loved working with me when I was calling the games. And so, like, that stuff goes a long way. Like,
Sure.
if I was not so nice to that head coach and RC called him, he would have told him something different, and it would have made RC feel a certain way. So, you know, and RC wasn't just the only person that had a hand in this decision. You know, my direct boss, Mike Ciccarello, he's known me for a little while and has seen my growth, and a bunch of other people with the Spurs. So passion and relationships, I think, are big things, and relationships with the players. Like, they need to know that I'm not in it to, call them out or, be on their bad side. Like, I'm their guy. Like, I'm hyping them up. I want to know their stories. I want to know what's going on. So, and what's cool about me is that I'm kind of their age.
Hmm.
A lot of
Hmm.
players are in their prime at 28 years old in the NBA, and so I'm sort of like them in a way. We're the same age, and so they're multimillionaires and they're celebrities, but we're still the same age and going through some of the same
Right,
stuff.
right.
So I can relate to these guys a little bit, and I think that helps a lot too. So relationships not only with your bosses, but the people you're covering as well.
Yeah. What do you love most about it?
I love I love just that it's a fun job. It's just a fun job, and I always, I heard Doc Emmerich, who was a longtime announcer for the NHL, probably the best ever. Called so many Stanley Cup Finals for NBC.
Hmm.
I heard him do an interview, or it was like a little documentary about his life, and I've watched it so many times. I'm not even a hockey guy. I just love his announcing.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, he was always just like, I just wanted a fun job, and I was like, that's how I feel. Like, my dad was a state police officer. Worked really hard. Came from nothing, sort of thing, and like I saw that, and at first I kind of wanted to be a police officer, but
Sure.
I
Yeah,
was like,
yeah.
you know what? I think announcing is a lot more fun and a lot more safe. And I never, and he's a construction guy, a carpenter, and I don't have any of those skills. I have nothing, and
No
so
aptitude.
I'm useful. I'm useless in that aspect. And so I'm like, you know what? I want a different job than that. And it's just like I get to, I wake up and I'm like, let's go. Can we get the tip off already? Like, it's
Yeah.
9:30, but can we get it's 7? I want it to be 7 p.m. And that's just like the best part about it is like I'm in it. It's a fun time. I'm just documenting greatness all the time, especially with our team with Wembanyama. And I hear myself in interviews or not even interviews, like promotional things on commercials on TV. I hear my voice and I've heard my voice in Netflix, which is wild already. I've heard my
Hmm.
voice
Hmm.
all over the place. I'll just scroll on my phone and my voice pops up, and to me, like, that's that's it. That's what I wanted. And some people are still starting to know, figuring out who I am, and oh, that's the announcer. Like, that's the Spurs new guy, because it takes a little while, right, to establish yourself. But for me and my friends and my family, like, just hearing my voice on the NBA's social media is beyond what we ever thought was possible. I always thought it was possible, but you just never know. You never know until you get there, and for me, that's the best.
And it does seem like you're loving life in San Antonio. On your Instagram page, I know you're a musician, so I saw a recent cruise down the river where I think you were playing some kind of live show or something, either for
Yeah,
people on a boat or on the side. How do you stay current on the industry? Is it talking with your peers? Technology is changing, the business is changing, but how do you stay current, and or do you need to stay current on things that are happening in broadcasting and sports media?
yeah. No, I always. I'm just a nerd about it, and that's something that I told the Spurs as well. I was like, I'm always in tune with media. I listen to a bunch of podcasts about sports media, and that sounds boring. And it kind of is, like, to other people, but to me, it's super interesting. And that's what I would always do. I'd always listen to announcers' interviews and just pick different things, like how did they get to this point. And I feel like I'm a mix of of everyone because I know a lot of these guys and gals stories. But in terms of like how the industry's changing, yeah, I'm always on top of it. How to it's just all going to social media and online and streaming, and frankly, the Spurs are trying to figure that out too. I mean, half the NBA local TV rights are in flux, and we're sort of part of that, and they're trying to figure out the next phase. And so I'm sort of in this middle window where we're still doing stuff the old way, but we're also still venturing into newer stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
that was sort of, I guess my appeal is that I'm young. I kind of know the new way of doing stuff, social media, streaming, but I still grew up watching the older way, so I kind of understand both aspects of it. And so I'm always in tune. Always asking my boss, hey, what's the latest with our deal with FanDuel Sports
Mm-hmm.
Tickets?
Mm-hmm.
When we back, what is, and we do a cool, like, we do a viewership survey. So we
Oh,
have
really?
a certain number of people that fill out a survey for every broadcast and give
Mm-hmm.
us feedback, and it's a big part of why I'm still here. I think they checked me off and said, all right,
Yeah,
this kid's not that bad, bring him back, and so I'm back.
that's good.
That's
The
great.
course evaluation, like we have here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It's good. I don't know
yeah,
if it's a 10 out of 10, but it was passing.
yeah.
So, but that just kept us in tune with, oh, they liked that segment last night. Oh, they,
Yeah.
that maybe we won't do that segment again. It just kept
Mm-hmm.
us up to up to beat on that. So yeah, I'm always sort of watching other broadcasts. How are they doing things? And I'm just kind of always interested in broadcasting. So to a lot of people, it's boring, but I like it. So be up to date.
Well, as a marketer, it's interesting to hear the research piece of it and the constant surveying. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
This is always the toughest question I ask people because you have a job, and I'm not going to surmise that you're looking for another job. But um, what would the future Jacob be doing? And sports allows you not even a side hustle, but there are plenty of people who do their local gig and then do national games too. Is that what you envision? Is that what you'd be aiming for? Is to make that national NBA, lineup of announcers?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be lying if I said no. I mean, obviously, that's at some point, yeah, for sure. Now, calling the finals, like, that's such a hard thing to say. Like, one person gets to do it for, Mike Breen's been doing it since the mid whatever 2000s. So
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to pinpoint it like that, but to do big games during the regular season nationally, to do playoff games, yeah, why not? And the NBA local TV rights are losing the ability after this season to do the first round.
Yeah, I know.
So and we didn't make the playoffs this year. So the only way I'll get to do a playoff game moving forward is if I work for NBC or Amazon or
Mm-hmm.
something. And so yeah, that's for sure a goal. I would be lying if I said it wasn't. I'm not saying it's going to happen next year or whatever, but who knows? I didn't even think I'd be doing the WNBA, and that literally just fell out of nowhere, and now I'm doing it. And so that's
Cool.
really cool. People always ask me, do you want to work in the NFL? Do you want to do other sports? And like, I do, like, but it's not like I wouldn't like be mad about it if I never did the NFL. Like, it'd be cool. My more experience for me is in baseball. Like, if I did if I did Major League Baseball first over the NFL, I wouldn't shock me just because I have more experience in
Mm-hmm.
baseball broadcasting. But yeah, why not? I mean, I don't I don't know a ton about golf right now. I'm still learning golf, but like, yeah, if in 15 years, if I feel confident enough to do golf, like, sure, I'll do golf. Like, it's totally different, but
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't, I
yeah.
don't want to rule. And I don't want to rule it out just because you never say never. But hockey, I'm not there. I don't have the knowledge. I'm not into
Yeah.
it as much as everything else. Like if I had to pick one thing that I said that's probably not on my radar is hockey. But again, if I work for somewhere that gets the hockey rights and they're like, you're doing it, well, yeah, I'm gonna do it, obviously. So never, never, never say
Yeah.
never.
Yeah.
That's just probably the one that's like the last thing that I would, probably end up doing just because of my experience or lack
Yeah.
thereof. But
It
yeah, playoffs, bigger games for sure. Especially now, just because I can't do them because of the local situation, which
right, right.
is what it
It
is.
it is interesting what you say about hockey because there's a local guy that you know of, Boston guy, Sean McDonough, who I never thought of as a hockey guy. Maybe he called the Bean Pot back in the day, but now he's that lead guy for ESPN on hockey, and I think he does a great job. So he's obviously much further along. He's been doing it for 30, maybe 40 years at this point. I think he's a little bit older than me. Um, what do you wish you knew? What do you know now, being 8 years into your career, that you wish you knew when you were in college? Like, what would you say to your early? And it sounds like you just hustled all the way through, so maybe there isn't. But is there anything that if you could tap yourself of 7 years ago on the shoulder and say, "Do this"? Is there something you would say?
Hmm. I would say like tone down the pressure that I put on myself slightly.
Mm-hmm.
But that pressure made me work hard. But like I feel like I crossed the line slightly and took it a little too seriously, like just a little bit. Like I probably could have, you know, done a couple more fun things in college over, doing a game or something. That one or two games where I could have went on a trip with friends to hike somewhere. So like that wouldn't have
Mm-hmm.
broken me or made me, any better. Um, so maybe that, but again, that pressure that I put on myself, like there's no plan B. There's no backup plan. I didn't minor in something that I could fall back into. I minored in
Mm-hmm.
Spanish, and I'm not going to be a Spanish teacher
Right.
because I'm not good enough to teach language. And so I never had a backup plan. Like it was always 1,000% going on.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of how you have to do it if you want to do something in this field, entertainment, music, something, being an actor. Like you can't you can't have something to fall back on because then if the first adversity hits, you're like, well, I tried, but now I can
Yeah.
go into
Yeah.
the office and be an accountant. You know, I never looked at it that way. There's if I was gonna go down swinging and try and do this as best I could, and yeah, so maybe tone down the pressure just a little bit. Patience is always like that's the I struggle with patience. I'm not a patient guy. I wanted everything right then. I wanted to be in the NBA right when I graduated, and
Yeah. Yeah.
I knew that wasn't gonna happen, but I still wanted it and tried to make it happen. And so it's if you work hard enough, it's going to happen. And that's what I would sort of tell myself, like cool it a little bit, not not
Yeah.
not all the way, just a little bit, because it's gonna happen. You just stop like going 150 and maybe go 130.
Yeah.
Um,
So is having the patience or overcoming adversity the biggest challenge that you would tell yourself to be
yeah,
ready for?
yeah. I would think so. But I would also tell myself like you're doing exactly what it's gonna take. Like literally keep doing it. And there's no one way to do it. There really isn't. I could have
Right,
a
right.
lot of a lot of people go into minor league baseball and grind it out for 5 to 7 years, and that's how they make it. And I could have done that. I just financially didn't work out for me, and had an offer to do it, just didn't do it. I went to local TV instead.
Yeah.
That was like the greatest amount of money, but it was more money than minor league baseball. And you know, I love the first job that I did because it was in Oklahoma, which I'd never been to, and I experienced college sports. Growing up in New England, we just don't put that much emphasis on it. It's it's just secondary because of all the pro sports.
Yeah.
And going to Oklahoma, it runs that state. The Sooners
Yeah, yeah.
run Oklahoma State, big Division I school, um, and I just learned the college game, especially the Big 12,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
from being out there, um, and that got me up to speed on. I knew the NBA, I knew NFL, I knew Major League Baseball. Now I know college. Then I started doing college games, and so it all makes sense. So I
Yeah.
would just tell myself to keep doing it, tone it down slightly, but keep going.
Well, last question here. Can you share one day, event, or perk that confirmed to you that you had the best job of anyone you know? And you probably have, 1,000 of them, but is there one? And you were alluding to a conversation you had with Pop before your interview, so maybe that's the story to tell. But is there a day you said, "Geez, there's nobody I know that has it better than me"?
Well, when you say perk, like flying and traveling with an NBA team is you, otherworldly. I mean, you're on a private plane, you're in first class seating, you're being served Ruth's Chris every single day. Like when you land, you're bussed right off the tarmac. You literally 2 steps off the plane onto a bus. You're bussed to a 5-star hotel, Four Seasons, Ritz Carlton, whatever it may be, right on the water in Santa Monica, right in the heart of downtown New York City. Massive hotels, expensive hotels. Like that's to me, like I'm like, what am I doing here? Like I don't belong here. This is crazy. Those are pretty cool perks. But yeah, getting to know legends of the game, regardless of who they are, players, coaches, broadcasters. That is, to me, is a thrill. And yes, like I was having dinner with Sean Elliott, my potential partner, the night before I was going to interview with a bunch of the Spurs people. Our producer, our director, my boss was there, and all of a sudden I get a tap on the shoulder, and it's Pop, Coach Pop, and he was having dinner there. I think he maybe knew what was going on, and he
I
wanted
was
to
gonna
meet
say,
me.
is it such a small town that he would just happen to be there, or was he planted there?
They picked one of his favorite spots, and he just so happened to be there. That's how it was put. I don't believe it, but
Uh,
he wanted to meet me, and he goes, "Oh wow, this is why everyone's gathered here." And, Coach Pop, he gives you a little something, something, jokes, and he's like, "Man, what do you know about basketball? Like, why are you even here? Like, who are you?" And you know, I gave it back to him. I was like, Coach, I've been, doing play-by-play since I was in college, and I was decently good in high school, and I've been playing. He goes, No, you weren't good in high school. Coach, I'm the leading scorer at my high school,
uh,
and he goes, No, you weren't. I'm like, I sent you the article, and so I kind of, was nice enough to give it back to him a little bit, still be
yeah.
very respectful, and Coach very very appreciative of you, wanting to meet me and all that, and at the end of it, he goes, "Man, super happy for you. Happy you're here. Good luck." And he was everything runs through Pop, and so
Yeah.
ultimately, he was the one that signed off on me. Now, did he, really know me outside of that 5 minute, 10 minute conversation? I'm not sure. His advice to people that were also in the deciding pool was, all these people are talented. Like they have great voices. Like who do you want to hang out with when you guys are on the road?
Yeah, yeah,
Who's,
for sure.
who's nice? Like you're gonna be with this person a lot. Like who do you want to have a beer with after the game? And that advice from him is great. And it's sad because he had a stroke, and I only got 5 regular season games with him, and I got to interview him once. But it was a great interview because I asked him. I said, Coach, this is my first home opener in my career. This is your 29th.
Hmm.
You know, is there any advice that you have for me? And he said, just be yourself. Don't try to be somebody else. And if that's not good enough for him, screw him. And that was it. He smiled,
That
and
was it.
I said, screw him. Dan, send it back to you, Dan, our pregame host. And that was the interview, and that'll always stick with me throughout my career. That's probably the only time I'll ever interview him on camera ever again. And it was the first and the last. And like, it's true. And it's this most simple message, but I really tried to just exist on the air as Jacob Tobey and not this you know other person, and that's hopefully how it sounded.
Well, I can say, from a personal experience that, having met you in person when you came to campus and talked to my class and talking to you today, I mean, you're just a great representative of this region of Suffolk. And it's been a pleasure to, hear you talk about growing that career and building it. And there's so much value to hearing from someone of your age who's close to the, students who are here and have the same aspirations. Maybe it's not necessarily to be a broadcaster, maybe it's closer to what I've done on the business side, but I'm far older and far further along in my career, so my perspective isn't necessarily the same. And what you have to share and offer is so important. So I do appreciate greatly the amount of time you've taken, both in person and today.
Yeah, and I appreciate it. Thank you. I know it's for me. It's cool because I'm young enough to be like, guys, I'm not that much farther along than you. Like, I totally get where you are as a college student, as a young professional, and so since I got the job, I've had I've spoken to numerous classes. I've had students email me already, reach out to me. So if you need advice or whatever, I'm here. It's for me. I've had mentors that are way more famous than me that take time to mentor me. Like I said, Kevin Harlan, Brian Anderson, two of the best to ever step behind the mic. And most of the time, everyone in this business is super willing to help you out because it's fun when you get in it, and we all just want people to enjoy what they're doing, and we do that. So thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Thanks for the interest, and go Rams. Always go Rams.
Immerse yourself in the dynamic world of sports through the Sawyer Business School's new sports management program. Our program integrates marketing, entrepreneurship, finance, economics, law, ethics, and analytics to prepare you for the complexities of managing and growing a sports business in today's global economy. Suffolk University's campus is steps away from the TD Garden and Fenway Park. Our unique partnership with the Boston Celtics offers access to a world-class organization. Our relationships with sports organizations throughout Boston and the region offer you immersive opportunities that can help you position yourself for a lifelong career in the $80 billion sports industry. Join us here at the Sports Management Program at Suffolk University. Visit suffolk.edu now.